Welcome to the first Expeditionary Center Contingency Response Wing Facebook Live event for our AMLOs out there today. Major General Chris Bentz, I've got Colonel Chuck Henderson and Lieutenant Colonel Colleen in here today as we go forward and talk to you all about the future state of AMLOs. We do have all the comments up on the side. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to drop on in and let us know what's on your mind. This is your time. This is your time to talk to myself and the CRW leadership. At the end, I might kick this out if you just want to have a one-on-one conversation without the wing and squadron commander in the room, and we can do that too. But it is an honor to be here today and be able to address you all. A little bit of warning, we are live on Facebook, and so this is streaming and it's unclassified, so be careful of our comments. Let's keep it at that level as we go forward, and obviously just keep it professional as we go forward with that. I'd like to open up with kind of the status of where we are at in developing the concept of operations to manage the AMLO program as a whole. And so great work by Colonel Henderson, Colonel White as the group commander, and then Colonel Colleen as we're going back and forth and trying to codify the vision that General Knight, myself, Chief Williams has here about professionalizing the AMLO Corps. That does not mean that it's not professional already, but what it means is putting general officer oversight over the program. And you're looking at the general officer that is responsible for it right now. Something that I took to General Everhart about a year ago. We've talked a lot about the program. He's given me the go-do to make this happen, and the staff and us are working through all the nuances of what does it mean. In a nutshell, it starts with the accession. Who is selected to become an Air Mobility Liaison Officer? And this is something that we feel, the leadership team here feels, it's got to be the right officer at the right point in their career. It should not be left up to AFPC devices. That said, we're still negotiating with, should it be a general officer boarded process at Air Mobility Command, such as the Phoenix Horizon program? Should it be part of that? Should it not be part of it? Should a portion of that, of the AMLOs, be in that process? So there's still a lot of things that we're discussing. A couple of red lines is obviously currently right now as a program, it is a rated officer. We feel that rated officer should be at least an instructor in a major weapon system so that they continue that aviation expertise, but on a infrequent basis. In other words, having that instructor and that experience of an instructor that allows you to come in, fly with an attached unit, to maintain that skill set, maintain the gate months, and doing all the professional things required of a mobility aviator, but at the same time knowing your primary responsibility is doing the AMLO duties. No different than officers that we have in the Phoenix Mobility program. Exactly what they do as they come into the en routes or they come into the contingency response wing, they fly infrequently and do that. So that makes it a little bit unique. We're looking for somebody that has that mobility, expertise, and depth and breadth behind them to be that officer at the pointy end of our Army and Marine Corps brethren as we go forward with that. How we get to that point is some things, again, we're working at. I spent a lot of time this past spring and summer with AFPC talking to the assignment management team, talking to how do we, bring this into fruition, and then how do we get that going forward with that. You are Air Mobility Command's joint officers. You are the first round of joint officers that the command, especially at our 03 and 04 level, coming in to do that. So joint credit. There is a lot of discussion within Air Mobility Command and discussions that I've had with the headquarters Air Force A3 about how do we get the recognition for the duties that you all do in the 3-year tour that you spend as an Air Mobility Liaison Officer. There are some laws that we need to abide by, one of which is by law, only 04s and above are allowed to have joint credit. So, those are things that we are managing to become, and that's under the Goldwater's-Nichols Act, but to become a fully qualified joint officer. But that doesn't mean that you don't get the experience credit for the duties that you do. If you're a major coming out of it, the other bylaw aspect is the OSD actually mandates what positions are available to get joint credit. And that's a very contested and tightly controlled. For example, when I was a Deputy J3 at Transcom, I had officer billets at Transcom that were not joint credited billets, sitting side by side and doing virtually the same job as somebody else that was a joint credit. And so these are policy and law issues that we're tackling. But as you know, and what Colonel Colleen has done is all those 04s and above that were graduated from the program this summer were working their self-nomination for joint credit. And that is something that we're going to test those waters, be successful to go forward with that. Can we get to the point where some of the AMLO billets are joint credit billets? Potential. But we need to work on that as we go forward with that. And then there's the outplacement side of what we're doing with the CONOPS is how do we outplace the officers that graduate from the program? How do we maintain the visibility on those officers because of the professional development that they've received in this tour, to capitalize on that and then be able to bring them back into those joint accredited billets down the road, whether it's at the 04, 05, or even 06 level. Some of the initiatives with that include for the 05s that are sitting at the core and the MEF level, receiving ops officer-like credit, as we are currently in the process of submitting bids for ops officers to come into rated ops officer billets for next summer, should an 05 get that, so that when they complete at least maybe 18 months to 24 months tour, then they go right into a squadron command. So these are things that we're working with the CONOPS, working with the staff, and working with the bigger Air Force to try to codify it all so that we have places and processes in place to continue to professionally develop this set of officers within Air Mobility Command. So that's on the Phoenix Griffin CONOP, as we're calling it now, as it's going through the system. And I'm looking at Colonel Colleen and Colonel Henderson. Anything that either of you want to add with that, Colonel Henderson?
So I don't know if I got it, the mic will catch me, but I would say from the Phoenix Eagle list standpoint and those critical 05 spots, the in-placement, that's one of the things that we've already done and will continue to do after we've gone through the squadron command, and the DO picks off of that to potentially select some of those 05 specific billets from that list that remain vetted as squadron commander candidates.
Yep. All right. Colonel Colleen?
Nothing for me, sir.
Okay. All right. The last thing I want to open up or end with before we go into questions and answers is really a big thank you. You hear me say it time and time again. The work you all do each and every day is just phenomenal beyond reproach. Whether it's just day-to-day interacting with the Army and the Marine Corps, being that conduit back to Air Mobility Command, whether it's in the exercises or in the deployment phase. Currently we're doing a swap out in the AOR with some AMLOs. We have a couple other out there. But as you know, we've had AMLOs deployed throughout the hurricane relief effort side by side with the CR forces the AMOS forces, and then working right on in the pointy end to be able to continue to enable the relief efforts through the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and all those things. And it is not without notice. General Everhart, talked to him last night and this morning. He wanted me to express the thanks that he has. General Sharpie, who was deployed as the deputy JTF commander for the Puerto Rican relief, saw it firsthand and has done nothing but sing your praise. And so we can't thank you enough for representing not only Air Mobility Command but the United States Air Force out there and going out and doing those good works each and every day. Okay, with that, really like to know what's on your mind, or what suggestions, as you heard me talk at those that were at the Mobility Guardian dinner that we had, the social out there. We talked and kind of challenged y'all to give me some inputs, give us your thoughts on how do we take the AMLO program down the road. So from Pat at Fort Riley, he asked about the recommendation for a mid-level 04 coming out of an AMLO assignment. Do you envision rolling into a joint staff if they meet the gate months? Yes. Ideally, we're going to send you to an IDE program and then follow on and capitalize on that joint experience, whether it's at the joint staff or on a COCOM staff, to be able to leverage that skill. I think as we further develop this, that's part of my responsibility in managing with the AMC A1. How do we partner up those assignments for those that get selected for school or those that don't get selected for school? How do I partner with the AMC A3, who is the chair for the developmental team and those boards that set those vectors for those officers going forward? But I would like to be able to see that happen, a natural progression, ideally school, and then a joint assignment somewhere in the system. Okay, so would it be easier in the short term to get the AMLO assignment onto the joint credit point list to enable us to apply and receive a few points? Would be beneficial in our records? The answer is no, it is not easier. Again, there's a revalidation of the entire enterprise's joint billets. It's called the JDAL. And so managed from the joint staff, but owned by OSD under the Goldwater's Nickel Act that designates and tightly controls which staff billets are joint credited billets. But just like folks who deploy and do a joint job can self-nominate for the joint credit, I think that's the first step in establishing that what you do each and every day is equivalent to somebody sitting on the joint staff or somebody sitting on the UCOM, PACOM, STRATCOM, you name the combatant commander staff doing it. And so we've discussed with Colonel Killeen, Colonel Henderson, and Colonel White about understanding the rule set for that self-nomination package, using the joint terminology. I mean, the playbook is not that hard to discover, but using the joint terminology that's published in the joint pubs that talks about how you influence operational planning, strategy, or execution in the field. So.
It's the AMLO core course. You got some new AMLOs that are going through the course right now as well.
Okay. I know we got some of their. I get to talk to them next week too. For the AMLOs that are going through the course, that are sitting. They're at Fort Carson right now doing their field work, right? Yep. Okay. Appreciate that. So we got a question out there about taking time to provide some insight. Several leaders, mostly squadron commanders, include those in AMC, that have no clue what an AMLO is or does on a daily basis. Are there any plans to provide educational insight to these leaders? Absolutely. But it's going to take some time. So I started last year about this time when I was at Air Mobility Command and the Phoenix Horizon Board. I have the opportunity to go and talk to every squadron commander induction course at Air Mobility Command. So it's a requirement for all squadron commanders to go into to be a squadron commander, do a week-long course at AMC, and I get to talk to them about leadership. I do always put a plug in for AMLOs, although for you all, that's every squadron commander, whether they're a civil engineering squadron commander, comptroller, to being a flying squadron, where you all come from. The flying and the ops group commanders are the niche that I'm targeting now to be able to make the awareness on there. As you heard me talk before, we as a command have not done you all justice, and I say that point blank. But we're fixing that. The stand up of the squadron and giving a squadron commander ops officer oversight with a group and wing command in charge, and then all the way up to the numbered Air Force equivalent, a la me, to be able to carry that message. We need to show some wins, and some of that has started already. What I mean by wins is folks that have done an AMLO tour and then have been on to go on to be squadron, group, wing commanders. And so part of this professionalizing the AMLO program is to have the mechanisms in place to track and do that. And you're seeing it. The Air Base Group Commander at a Joint Base Lewis McChord is an AMLO. And that's the perfect place to take somebody that has all that experience, because not only are the Joint Base Group Commander at Lewis McChord, but they're the Fort Lewis Deputy Garrison Commander for the United States Army. And so someone who's had that experience, who's exercise trained, deployed with the United States Army, who better to go in and have the credibility to be the Deputy ASA or Deputy Garrison Commander for the United States Army, that unit. That's one example as we go forward. We're hiring some squadron commanders that we just brought into Air Mobility Command as a graduated AMLO, and continuing on. Part of this is, obviously an officer has to continue to grow, perform, and be able to make all the cuts that will get them to squadron command. But that's the intent of the program. But you're absolutely right, because unless the squadron commanders are purposely mentoring and vectoring those high caliber officers to the AMLO program, then we won't fill that caliber stuff going forward in there. It's also been educated because Colonel Colleen just had an opportunity, as Colonel Henderson reminded me last week. Last week, there was the Warfighter Talks at Barksdale Air Force Base, so formerly known as the CAF-MAF. So, however, it was all the MAGCOM commanders getting together at Barksdale, and Air Mobility Command had 2 time slots, and one time slot was nothing but the AMLOs. And pitching it to the 4 stars on how your program is General Goldfein's number 2 focus area in building joint officers and what the program is. And so we started that education process at the 4-star level, at the same time we're doing that. From that and the overwhelming positive remarks received, General Everhart has already tapped Colonel Colleen, and he is carving out part of AMC A1's briefing time at this week's ATA convention to give Colonel Colleen some time to talk about the program, to hit that audience and going forward with it. So great questions going in there. Right. Of course, we had the 3 AMLO captains who really did the lion's share of the work. because I knew better than putting Colonel Colleen out in front of those folks.
That's right.
But that's how you could help us tell that story. You can help us tell that story by grabbing that local PA and talking about what you do as an airman at an Army or Marine installation, what you do as an Air Mobility Command airman at that Army or Marine installation or overseas, and how you fit all that stuff together. So great question. All right.
He is a full-time Fort Carson AMLO.
Okay, so API 6 billets are hard to come by. Is there any initiative to try and garner more for the AMLO enterprise? It's a great attractor for interested officers. We seem to get a great response from there. The absolute answer is absolutely yes. We owe you that opportunity. We owe, again, the program, and that's part of the details that we're working with the command, is making sure that your slots are not only fully funded API 6 flying billets, but you're actually assigned to a unit. It's getting more and more difficult, be honest with you, for the navigators out there. Yokota just transferred their last H model, and so the only C-130 navigator openings are in the Guard and Reserve. But I've already talked with Lieutenant General Miller, the Air Force Reserve Command Commander, and asked her for her help and support. And my IMA, Brigadier General Boyd Parker, is championing that effort to be able to work with those reserve units to allow our navigators to fly. Same thing with the 135 community, the handful that we have at McConnell with the SOAR mission. That SOAR mission is going to close down and weather vane sunset out of the system, and so we're working those issues. On the pilot side, we have opportunities. What Colonel Henderson will do is work with his partner wing commanders to be able to do those on-loan attachments, again, to be able to continue that side of it. So we are working that, and that's part of the focus. All right.
So this is actually a good news story that he called out here. Captain Andrew Morris is at AMLO there at Fort Carson, attached with the Peterson C-130H unit, and actually flew one of the missions from there in hurricane relief for Puerto Rico. It's pretty awesome.
Awesome, absolutely. And I'll tell you, we have the same issues in the Phoenix Mobility Program in trying to get those officers, the rated officers in that program, attached to units to fly to. And so as we go forward with that, so out there going forward. We've done some equipment purchases. We've got some new, I don't know if it's received yet.
The new radios.
The new radios?
We have all of our radios now.
Okay.
Going through receipt and be pushed out here in the next couple of weeks.
Which is a great news story that we started, I think, ATA last year, in partnering with AFSOC and SOCOM to be able to make sure we get not only great, up-to-date and current, but then, common platforms that we can work with our special operating brethren, because you all are just as well equally supporting them out there in the field with your duties and responsibilities as you go forward. And General Webb, the commander for AFSOC, is a very big proponent. I got to really have a great conversation with him back in June when we were at Corona Top talking about that stuff. So I guess I'll put that out for the field. Is there equipment or other things that you would like to have or need to have?
So, sir, while they're typing, I'll bring up one. So, for example, I know we're real close to getting the lease vehicles, right?
Yes, sir.
So our AMLOs don't always get the support of their Army and Marine Corps partners for the vehicles they need to be able to do their job. And so it kind of goes back to that education piece, right? We need to make sure that the joint leaders understand that when they get an AMLO, that there's a commitment to be able to support that AMLO so that they can support them. They're there 100% to support them. And so therefore they need more support than just a regular general purpose force troop that might be coming through. So we've gone to look for some vehicles that we can lease at all these locations around the world, because I didn't want to own vehicles around the world. But we're getting real close to that. But potentially some just knowledge and education at the AMC and actually the MAGCOM level, right, to understand that support network, or even MOUs potentially in the future to address that specifically. When you have an AMLO, here's the care and feeding that's required.
It's a good point. As I travel and get out there, and I am just getting ready to go out to visit the UK, Italy, and Germany. I need to spend more time not only with the AMLOs, which like we did, I guess back in August when we went through Osan, Kadena, and Yokota to spend time, but spend time with their respective sister service units. I did spend some time with 3MEF when I was out there, but to talk more about that care and feeding, like I do the en routes, and I talk to even Air Force Host Wing. We have the same issue with just Air Force supporting en route tenant squadrons and groups out there in the system. So, and we really appreciate any feedback you have. Was this kind of a session? Is it worthwhile? Is the video and the audio clarity good enough as we go forward with that? So, okay.
So, sir, this question may get right into some of the content of Global Griffin.
Okay. Do you recommend any new qualification or courses AMLO should take? As a squadron, we're always looking for new tools we can use in order to become more diverse AMLO. I guess I would defer back to you all. You've gone through the training that we do at Det 2 and then the field work at Fort Carson. Now those that have been out in the field for X amount of time, what improvements do we need to make? Where should we have spent more time, less time? I've looked at the curriculum, but I haven't heard of any other special qualifications or stuff that you would like. Can you give me an example?
So while they're doing that, I'll say one thing that we're kind of in between here. I've been fielding some questions because I'm about to go to the MAF DT here in a couple weeks, and so I've been fielding some questions about what do we put on that? Where do we stand for IDE right now while we're still waiting for guidance? And I think that's a personal choice at this point.
I can give you my 2 cents on that.
But I think that certainly if that personal choice were to lead these extremely joint officers to want to seek something in a sister service from a PME standpoint, only you know what your current base offers in respect to that, and there might be opportunities there. That would certainly be something that's doable from right there on location, and to even further expand that joint officer getting after that second focus area.
Yeah. On the topic of do IDE or not do IDE, I'll tell you, all the old heads from General Everhart, General Sharpie, General Tuck, myself, all the way down. We have lived each cycle of do your PME, don't do your PME, get a master's, don't get a master's. The one constant is those who do it earlier, regardless of where they're at, it's just one less thing on their minds that they have to do. The longer you wait, the more responsibility, whether it's job, whether it's rank, and family, is just demands on your time. As a study of gaming theory, as a mathematician, if nobody did it, it wouldn't be a factor. But as soon as one person does it, then it becomes a factor and it becomes a discriminator. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I have sat on boards and watched senior officers take a look at not only did they complete it, but when they completed it, a la compared it to their data rank. Did they do it right away and show initiative, regardless of whatever pressures are on that officer at a time? That's the reality and the experience that the older senior folks have. And so our advice has been to just knock it out. Now, I have pushed into the headquarters staff, and General Everhart has supported bringing back tools that we used to have when I went through IDE and SDE, because we had no select status back then. And it was a requirement to do it in correspondence so that you were competitive to be able to be selected to go in residence. So, but we had a program called IDE and Seminar, and SDE and Seminar. And so I did both Air Command and Staff College and Air War College by seminar. I met once a week with a group of folks, and we did it by seminar together as kind of like a class. It helped reduce some of the burden, quite honestly. One officer was responsible for that week's lesson, and they prepared notes, they wrote out objectives, and they passed it out, and then they taught that week's lesson. And so in aggregate, you only taught a lesson every 2 months, and you still did the readings, you still did the work, but doing it that way. And then you were done in 10 months. You were done in 10 months because you taught the lessons, you took the exams at the same time, and away you went. Most of the senior officers sitting today did correspondence that way, and we all think it should come back. Whether the big Air Force will agree, General Goldfein, soon to be General Quast, he'll take command of AETC from Air University, but be the AETC commander on the 15th of November. We'll see to going down there. But my advice is to get it done. If you have an opportunity, especially you all, to do one of the sister service programs in correspondence because you're sitting at that installation, do it. Get it done and get it in the Air Force records. So, okay. Did that answer? You think?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I got a question from outside Facebook. Down the road, will officers meeting the PE board be able to identify that they want to serve as AMLO tour in lieu of a traditional DO tour? Good question. I don't know why they couldn't or why they wouldn't. But again, what I would like to see is all those DO positions we know are coming available, including those 05 AMLO billets at the Corps and MEF level, being DO equivalent positions. That's what I'm wrestling and trying to get across the goal line in the command to be able to have that identified. And so yes, we would hire off the potentially the Phoenix Eagle list, because not all DOs are hired off the Phoenix Eagle list, but a majority are. Same be kind of the equivalents of being the chief of wing safety. Those are DO equivalents to be able to posture, for a command down the road. So I got a question. We picked up JEC PC slots starting last year because we identified the need for understanding that part of overall planning. It's true that we are the ones that need to ID the gap in knowledge we grow as a squadron. Are there any new skills you think an AMLO should have 5 years from now as we continue to expand? I think, I don't know if I say there's new skills that you need to have. I think it's more documenting and codifying those skills you get now, especially at the operational level of war in planning, to be able to leverage those 5 years down the road. So assuming, the AMLO comes in as a senior captain, young major, makes major, goes out, 5 years down the road, you should be a lieutenant colonel select looking at squadron command. What I would like to see is you've leveraged all that operational art of war, turn that into an 05 staff job that propels you into that squadron command. I don't know, Colonel Henderson, do you have any thoughts on that? Other skill sets?
5 years down the road is it actually seems like a long ways right now as we look at Global Griffin. I would say not so much what are the skills, but what will we have in place 5 years from now? What will the program be? How will it be being executed? And then just that, I think we've got the skills in place that we need. We've got the best joint officers in Air Mobility Command, according to General Everhart, and we'll continue pushing that message. I think that the skills are right on there. Really, what I would ask is, what skills do your supported commands need? Because that's where that's who you're serving. That and General Everhart. What is there any gap between the two of those? We've identified gaps in other specialties that we have in our AMAG squadrons. Are there any gaps between what your MEF division commanders are requiring and what you are able to deliver to them? Or when you deploy it, everybody deploys, it seems, and does their period of time in CENTCOM. What are those gaps that we can fill? And that's where we need to identify where we need to be 5 years from now.
Colonel Colleen?
I absolutely agree, especially with what Colonel Henderson said. So a lot of stuff we've been able to get back from the deployments, specifically with the expansion out west. And we can see what's picking up there for future operations, just as what these guys have been doing in their development of our inaugural AFTTP and codifying those lessons learned, because that's just going to be a trickle-down effect on all the conventional units we're going to have to employ later on, especially if we, God forbid, had to execute old plans even farther out to the west or to the east.
Yep. Again, I think for you all and for us, the key is really codifying down this program. Once we have that down, and then and we have the mechanisms in place to not only provide you the developmental opportunity, but then, for lack of a better term, track and give you that credit down the road. We do a really good job in Air Mobility Command of giving folks depth and breadth in say the airlift mission and the tanker mission. We're slowly starting to get the credit for the GAMS, the Global Air Mobility Support System, which includes you all, the Contingency Response Forces, the air advisors, and the en routes. As they go down that road, to have the three legs of Air Mobility Command's lines of effort, and then have that recognized down the road and giving you that credit again there. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. SPOC is another course that we just recently procured for a few of our AMLOs. Are there any other course you think we should make us better mobility advocates as we add further justification of joint credit down the road? I think it really depends. The 03 Young 04 level or the 05 level will really open up that aperture for what courses are available down the road to give you that, continue to build upon that depth and breadth. One of the things I have not explored, it's on the back of my list, is what sister service courses and programs are out there. What do you see your Army and Marine counterparts attending, at that senior 05, young 04 level outside of, say CGSC, or going to Marine Command and Staff College at Quantico? So I'll ask, again, that's that feedback we need from you all in the field as you're out there seeing and understanding what sister service courses are out there, so that we can bring that into the repertoire and try to fight for some of those. I deal mainly with colonel and above level courses when we start that development, but that's at the 06 level is when we go forward for that. Doesn't mean that we couldn't get you into one of those courses, but again, they're controlled out of the colonel's group, DPO, at the Pentagon, and so we'll get in there. unless you guys know of any, have you other courses?
Not outside, sir, of the mainstream ones such as Airborne, Air Assault, Pathfinder.
Right.
But we'll definitely look into that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention, the Pathfinder one as well. But I'd defer some of that to Dingo and gathering that feedback.
All right. We got about 5 minutes left on our hour. I know we started a little late, but please, if you have more questions, feel free. You can email me directly. I've told you that before, at the consternation of Colonel Colleen, Colonel White, and Colonel Henderson, or use them as an avenue to continue forward with that. I'll pause. Are there any other saved questions? Oh, got one. Okay. How do you see the current rated officer shortage and projected shortage on the horizon impacting the AMLO career field and the plans discussed here today? I don't see it impacting it at all. Why? Because General Everhart has acknowledged that you are the frontline joint air mobility airman. And so I am taking that on a little bit of faith that you will be the first fills when we come, if we start getting into shortages and rated management. So yeah, the pilot shortage that we talk about is much more than just pilots for our Air Force. It's every air traffic controllers, it's maintainers, it's every part of the airline industry that is gobbling up because they're all hurting out there. But for us as a community, our mobility aviators, our mobility rated officers are doing better than our combat Air Force rated officers, for lack of a better term. Now that has manifested itself into Air Mobility Command officers paying bills on behalf of the combat air forces. But again, I think we can manage you all. It's a great question, but because of General Everhart's acknowledgement and the words he is saying, and it's so in line with General Goldfein's focus area number 2, I think we're going to fill you first. At least that's my intent going forward. You already, from the Colonel Henderson's perspective as he manages the entire contingency response wing, how rated officers are filled in his wing is unlike any other wing in the United States Air Force. We're tackling that, but there is one caveat, and that is the AMLOs. You all get staffed at a much higher percentage than the rest of Colonel Henderson's rated officer wings, and so that's a great acknowledgement of I think, the priority put on your job and what it means, and then we need to continue to leverage that out there. So, okay, but great question. All right, I know we're wrapping up. I'm going to give Colonel Colleen any closing comments you want to talk.
Sir, just thanks for your time. Thanks for being able to push out advice to these guys as they continue, guys and girls, as they continue developing in their career and doing the great things that they do every day.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Colonel Henderson?
Sir, I'll echo that. Phenomenal opportunity. Glad that we had so many folks in groups coming and joining in and asking some good questions and dialogue. Much better than I would say the commanders' calls that I hold where it's crickets. You can't go out there and hand them a microphone and force them to ask you a question, yet we had a really good dialogue here. So thank you for putting yourself out there, giving them that opportunity, and I'll say thank you for a year and a half plus now of staunch advocacy that starts here, but it consumes. It's embraced by AMC, and it's getting visibility now thanks to your push at the Warfighter Conference and beyond, and that will continue to grow. That's been a phenomenal success, and will continue to reap benefits. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you bet. Well, it's an honor. Again, it's going to take us some time. I'm very hopeful. We will get the ConOps codified. We will have it written down. We will start those processes, but at least we'll have it on paper, and then we'll continue to improve it and refine it and work the seams, work the policies, work the legislation, and then continually, because this is a phenomenal air mobility developmental officer program that you all get to be the cutting edge of. So I thank you all for that. With that, continue to do the great things. We're here for you. If you have any needs, cares, concerns, don't hesitate. And as Chief Williams and I get back out on the road, we look forward to seeing you all out there. We're going to be in both parts of Europe, the CONUS, and the Pacific here within the next 4 months as we're continuing our second swing through those AORs. So look forward to seeing you all in person. With that, we're out. Thank you.